And that's what we're going to talk about today. 5 psychological factors that will make you more motivated and increase your levels of willpower and keep you out of a state of ego depletion. The first is something called chunking. One of the best examples of chunking comes from one of the world's greatest magicians, David Blaine. Blaine is well known for his stunts of endurance. He once spent over 63 hours encased in a block of ice, and you can only imagine how much willpower that required. Blaine managed to pull this off by using chunking to create a constant supply of willpower. Chunking is when you take a large task and you break it down into tiny pieces. For Blaine, instead of focusing on the total amount of hours he wanted to spend in this block of ice, which was at least 60 hours, he broke it down to the hour. He would tell himself, okay, I just need to make it through the next hour, over and over again. The reason this works is because our brain is designed to be as efficient with our willpower as possible in order to conserve energy. We actually have an almost unlimited amount of willpower, but we all have a point in time where our brain says, nope, you've used enough, that's all you're getting for today. So when presented with a momentous task, your brain says, nope, we can't do this task, it's way too big, we don't have enough willpower to do it. But when you're using chunking and you focus your attention on one small piece at a time, then your brain says, hey, we could do this. Here's some extra willpower. And that's why in one of our previous lessons, I mentioned that we need to set a low bar when creating our routines. By setting a low bar, which is the minimum amount of work we're allowing ourselves to do, we're basically using chunking to get a little bit of extra willpower, just enough to force ourselves to stick to our habits. So how can we use this in our day-to-day lives? Well, instead of telling yourself that you're going to finish that 5-page paper right now, you're actually going to get more willpower, feel more motivated, and get more done if you tell yourself you're going to finish a single paragraph at a time. On top of that, chunking also increases the amount of confidence we have. Confidence is the second psychological factor that influences our levels of willpower. The more confident you are about a task, the less willpower it will require. Let's say that you want to lose 20 pounds. If I asked random strangers on the street how confident they were about this, most people would say that they weren't confident at all. However, if we use chunking and we cut this down to just 1 pound, most people would say, yeah, I could do it. Confidence is all about the small wins. By paying attention to small milestones, you actually become more and more confident towards your end goal. You start believing that you can actually do it. A great way to build confidence using small wins is by tracking your growth. For example, if you're someone who wants to lose weight, it's very effective to download an app like MyFitnessPal that allows you to track your progress. By tracking your weight and slowly watching your weight drop, this boosts your confidence and it requires less and less willpower to go back to the gym or stick to your diet. The third way we can influence our levels of willpower is by changing how we view willpower itself. Now, I know in our previous lessons I stressed the importance of things like avoiding ego depletion, and I taught you about ways in which our willpower levels are depleted. These things are real and serve a purpose, but a study conducted in 2010 by Professor Job V found that how we view willpower can severely affect our levels of it. For example, if you believe that willpower is limited, then you'll actually lose willpower faster than someone who believes willpower is unlimited. So what can we do about this? Well, let's establish the truth about willpower once and for all. The truth of the matter is, our levels of willpower far exceed the amount we use throughout the day. Our brain just likes to set a limit on it. However, if you've been studying the TAME course, you've gained some knowledge about how it all works. And knowledge is power, which means you have more control over your willpower. So I like to believe that by studying willpower, I actually know how to tap into my unlimited willpower more than the average person. And by adopting this very belief, you'll find yourself with more willpower in the long run. The fourth way we can influence our levels of willpower is by changing our identity. When you have an identity that aligns with your goals and the habits that you're trying to build, this decreases the amount of willpower required to stick to it. Now, this is easier said than done. How can we change our identity? Well, the best way to do so is by being very careful with our language. The way we phrase things will affect how we view ourselves. For example, if an urge arises to smoke, instead of thinking, I can't smoke, I told myself I was going to quit, we should be thinking, I am not a smoker. The person in the first example still identifies as someone who smokes, who's trying to quit, while the person in the second example identifies himself as someone who doesn't smoke to begin with. Over time, you'll start believing this new identity, which in turn will reduce the amount of willpower required to stick to this habit. Another good trick to keep in mind is to replace words like I can't, I have to, I must with I want to. The first three phrases are phrases that you would use if you still identified with the old you that you're trying to change. But if you use the phrase I want to, then you're agreeing with your new identity. The fifth and final way we can influence our willpower with our mind is by doing what's called high-level thinking. A study conducted in 2006 by Professor Fujita found that people who spent more time thinking high-level thoughts would have a significantly higher level of willpower throughout the day than those who had low-level thoughts. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, low-level thinking is when you think about the short term and you think about specifics. For example, you think about how you're going to get to the gym. You think about how you're going to lose your weight. You think about what foods you're going to eat. High-level thinking, on the other hand, is when you think about more general and long-term ideas. So it's when you think about why you're going to the gym, when you think about why you're trying to lose weight, when you're thinking about why you're changing your diet. Now, there's nothing wrong with thinking low-level thoughts because they are needed in order to plan ahead. You can't make dinner unless you think about what you're going to cook. But it's best to spend more time thinking high-level thoughts. High-level thoughts create a sense of purpose and meaning. If you think about why you're changing your diet enough, you start to truly believe that changing your diet is what's best for you. A great exercise that I'd recommend all of you to try is to take the keystone habit that you're trying to build in this course and fill out an entire page with why you want to stick to this habit. To sum it up, there are 5 powerful ways you can increase your willpower and get more motivated by changing the way you think. Number 1 is by chunking, breaking up your big goals into tiny tasks. Number 2 is by increasing your confidence so that you start believing that you can actually accomplish your goals. Number 3 is by changing how you view willpower, that you're someone who can tap into their unlimited well of willpower by studying and practicing how it all works. Number 4 is by changing your identity. It's easier to quit smoking if you don't identify as a smoker. And number 5 is by spending more time thinking high-level thoughts.